Welcome to Comic Book Junkies. I'm Joe.
I'm Andrew.
We have our very first guest, Socrates Montero. He's a coworker of mine. We share the same 9 to 5, and he's unfortunately leaving us here shortly. So before he leaves, I wanted to bring him on our podcast and talk about the differences between comic books, anime, manga. We'll get into a little bit of the art, the culture, and everything else that it entails. So Socrates, what's your background with anime, manga, and what makes that your preferred medium of entertainment?
I can say it's been since I was a kid, like everybody, for the most part, I feel like that's had a childhood has watched Dragon Ball, at least Dragon Ball Z, something of that nature where, it kind of has a piece of childhood still left in them. But, then it kind of, got to where I was getting older and then started seeing some other animes and mangas that started, grabbing my attention. And not something that sometimes people always see, oh, this is childish. That stereotype or that stigma kind of went away once you start seeing that a lot of the content that some of these shows have or some of these, authors put actually is more mature content and for people of age.
So it's mostly nostalgia for you then. I can agree with that. I grew up watching a lot of Dragon Ball Z, and I think we can find some common ground there. How about
Hell
you,
yeah,
Burger?
dude. I had the same thing. I mean, for comics, for anime too. I mean, I grew up watching Dragon Ball Z. I had some of the action figures. I mean, I liked shit like Pokemon, Digimon. I mean, that's more of like childish, but I mean, there was some weird ones back in like early high school / middle school. Joe was big on Naruto. He had the headband. He had like a patch. He was all.
We don't want to talk about the headband.
Yeah, but we are, bro. And then there's some. Other than that, I didn't get too deep into it. Joe kind of ventured more into that territory. I was kind of on the periphery, but I did like some goofy ass ones that were on like Cartoon Network. They had that Boba Bo, which was weird as all hell. But I mean, I'm the goofy as shit, so I really liked that one. But I kind of stepped back from there, and that's kind of how I started getting more into comics.
So, Burger, what makes comic books your preferred medium over anime, manga?
Blind nationalism? Just kidding. No, I mean, I really just like the historic roots of it. I mean, going back to like wartime stuff, just kind of like the rah-rah, we're going to take down Japan and Germany. And, I mean, just the cool, I don't know. I mean, it is goofy in its own sense, like the spandex and tights and dudes flying around doing this, that, and the other. But I don't know. It's just the designs, just the storytelling. It kind of has the same parallels with what Sock explained about, anime and manga, where it is honestly more mature than one would expect. So I don't know, just two sides of the same coin in a sense. I just kind of picked that one.
For the people listening, comic books are usually full of color, read traditionally left to right. Manga is read in the reverse order and is usually black and white. So I guess a good place to start would be the art. Comic books, I feel, have a better variety of art than manga because they constantly rotate out different artists, so that gives it kind of a different flavor. Superhero comics are a lot different than indie comics, for example, and they incorporate things from like watercolor to illustration, whereas manga, I feel, kind of is more specific to one style. They kind of feature more on the facial expressions, like the big eyes, the spiky hair. As far as the art category goes, that's kind of like my interest in comic books. I think they do a better job with the art.
To your point, I do agree that comics may focus more on actual illustration per se, but don't get it wrong. There is certain manga that has kind of like, their front page or their front cover. They have nice illustrations, but from there on, when they're actually telling a story, you go into more black and white. And they just do that just kind of to focus on a storyline. But I think where artists really focus more of their illustrations on is the actual anime. The animated portion, that's where, the big money comes in for people that are heavy into artists or illustration. You have animes like Demon Slayer, whose budget is ridiculous just because the amount of graphics that or work or money that they put into it really shows when you actually watch the show.
I would have to agree with you there. I think that's kind of where the art comes into play, is more on the anime side of things than the manga side of things, because to your point, comic books don't really have a lot of long-lasting animated TV series. where, you know, Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, stuff like that is kind of gone on for a very, very long time. And although I like the actual art better in the paper format, as far as like manga versus comic books, I would give the hands up to anime versus like the animated stuff for comic books because they don't have a lot of it.
A lot of people that actually are into like the anime and manga world, they start off watching anime. It's very rare that you find people now just starting off with manga unless they're, originally from the country that the anime or manga was created in. Because, they get first releases on all the manga and things of that nature. So there you have that. But you have made a point about, never mind. I can't really remember off the top of my head, but yeah, I think that's,
Did it have something to do with like the long lasting time between like
yes.
the series? Okay.
So, quick question: what do you think is the longest lasting comic that was turned into animation?
I would honestly say the Teen Titans off the top of my head. That animated series, probably when we were in like middle school, around that time.
I know they had different variations of different artists for that one. So
They had an animated Spider-Man series that lasted a little while. They had a Hulk one. They had the Batman, the animated series. I would say either Batman, the animated series, or the Teen Titans animated series would be the longest lasting. But I don't think those made impacts the way that like Naruto and Dragon Ball Z did. I do, however, think the significance lies more in those characters themselves than the actual series. Because with comic books, you get better longevity of the characters because they keep retelling, rebooting, and refreshing stories of Superman, Batman, Hulk, all of them, right? Whereas with anime and manga, you get one creative team, and what they will do with that is they'll keep going as long as they can with it, have a conclusion, and then maybe a spin-off. But that universe is kind of trapped within that storytelling, whereas the comic book characters kind of transcend the storytelling medium. Those comic book characters are forever because they're always getting new creative teams.
They have more of a continuity issue rather than an anime. Anime is like a manga is like a straight storyline. Like you said, it can go on longer than most ongoings for a comic book, but there's generally a beginning, middle, and end, or, some variation of that. A comic book story generally only goes between like 1 and 12 issues. And after that whole issue can basically be rendered like a moot point. Somebody can come in and just do something completely different, which is kind of good for pulling in new people, especially once it is, like a storyline's over and somebody does like Spider-Man, they can come in on the next arc. For some people, it may be daunting to try and get into a manga or anime when, like, oh shit, we're 200 like chapters in. How the hell am I going to catch up on this? Yeah. It's like, well, you better stay up and read Wikipedia. I don't know. But I think also just the familiarity, going back to your other point, like what's the characters that have had like a long running series that led to an animation? That's something where the movies do well, but they don't do the series very well when it comes to animation for both Marvel and DC. I mean, you can think back to even back in like the early 70s all the way until the mid 80s. There was the Super Friends show, which was basically a Justice League series. So it's like, it's been established for quite some time that there are animated series for these characters. People pretty much of that time will reference that. You don't see people our age really going back and rewatching that because, I mean, it's a different level of camp. It's a different level of stuff like that. But you will see people nowadays who are into anime. They'll go back and they'll go look for like some of the older stuff. Granted, I'm not super familiar, but I know like, I think Astro Boy or whatever, like that's old, stuff like that. I mean, Akira's not that old, but people will still go back to stuff like kind of like that. You don't see too many people going back if they haven't already seen it for like animated superhero stuff.
I also like that there's more continuity across comic books than there is anime and manga because Batman and Superman, for example, share the same universe. They live in the same universe, but Naruto and Goku do not. So you kind of get your storytelling with them, but you kind of get a more consolidated universe with the comic books because it's mostly just Marvel, DC, and Indie.
So I like the continuity idea because I'm going to let you guys know how it plays a role when it comes to manga and anime. So one thing, if you're in the midst of Hunter x Hunter, a lot of what Naruto got came from Hunter x Hunter. Actually. So when it comes to, the eye powers, when it comes to the Ren 10, all of that, Naruto, they typically use that's their energy. They got that. Hunter x Hunter was created as the manga first. Even if you watch newer shows, which I know you haven't got into, which like got out of high school, there's a whole webtoons. They have continuity from like, they make references. What I like about them, they make references to like older things that, anime readers will know. Like, so you haven't watched God of High School yet, have you?
No, I have not. But I will, to your point, I do like Hunter x Hunter. So for me, mostly anime and manga, not to cut you off, is I'm more dependent on the actual storyteller because the reason that got me into Hunter x Hunter was you, obviously, and then also I grew up watching Yu Yu Hakusho, so that kind of served as like a nostalgia thing for me. And so if I already liked that and you recommended something that he also wrote, that would drive me to watch an anime or read a manga, because it's not like you can't like both, but majority of the things we're talking about is the reason that I prefer the comics. But that is a good point that anime and manga reference each other quite frequently, and even though they're not in the same universe, they have a lot of the same storytelling or storytelling references.
And followers. That's why people, they put those references for people, that may have watched Hunter x Hunter or may have watched Dragon Ball Z. They kind of feed into each other, and it's never like, oh, you're taking my creative work. It's just more so of an applaud or to kind of, give them praise, the other writers for the work that they've done for the culture. One thing I would say is outside of the references, I think when you're talking about like, some people may be daunted by the amount of episodes that, or, how long a show has been running. One Piece is a show that has been going around for so long, and to watch the first episode, you look at it as very daunting. Like, you do not want to watch the show. If
that dude still has not found that treasure.
I know. And this is the thing, like, that's, they have movies. They do come out with movies for the people that don't want to, like that idea of, they create the accessibility art. They're going to crunch all of it. Granted, you may miss some key points, not key points, but you may miss some, some very details about that, the actual series when you do crunch it into a movie, because you can't fit everything in there. But you do have other points where, like, I'll tell you about Hunter x Hunter. I like the complexity of the individuals in that storyline where, it's not really dependent on Gon to carry the show. They had a whole season where they just talked about Kurapika and his vengeance. I feel like they can do a lot of that with Hisoka and his background. They feel like they can do a lot of that with Killua. So I think it depends on the writer. We can't generalize everything on certain shows. Like Naruto, you ask me, it's a very non-complex show, more for the kids, things of that nature.
Well, that Hunter x Hunter show has a lot of nuances. I'd have to agree with you there. But I find that the anime trope is usually that characters kind of get stronger throughout the series, whereas comic book characters maintain their strength and often are subject to like new predicaments and different villains. So that's kind of the difference in storytelling there, where like anime characters, like the main character will usually start off weak with a lot of potential and kind of grow into that, whereas comic book characters, the storytelling's told at their peak and they're kind of just doing something different than they've done in traditional runs.
How do you think that affects the character development in comics compared to anime? Because I know one thing, when anime, we talk about what makes anime so great or what makes a manga so great is the character development. And like you said, sometimes they have their power, sometimes they don't. Because there are certain instances or certain mangas where the main character doesn't realize he has all this power, or he has this power. He just doesn't know who he is yet due to whatever circumstances the storyline may bring.
So I agree. Like, I give it, yeah. I think, like, to play devil's advocate and actually take anime and manga aside for once, that I think that having those long form storytelling, like in pretty much a strict continuity over a certain amount of time with one cohesive creative team, I think that character development is actually probably why that anime and manga is so popular as opposed to comics. I mean, I'm sure the readership of anime and manga, or, manga specifically, is probably way more than American comics, especially nowadays. But I think that that is something where American comics falter. A lot of times nowadays, most of the books aren't really thought out. Back in the day, it was very simple, like, oh, this guy is going to fight somebody, beat him up, he's going to show good morals and American values, and then that's the end of the story, we'll see you next week. Nowadays, it's a lot of people who are trying to write out, they're trying to write whatever about them, what they believe in like a 6-issue segment, and then the next person will come in and completely wipe that away. So the character development is like, it can't happen. I think part of it's due to the reverence for the characters having been around since like the late 30s, so they can't really take too many liberties, as where anime and manga have like no creative constraints. The person who's writing the book owns the characters. They can do whatever they want with it as they see fit. Comic books in America, like DC and Marvel, those are all owned by a company, and they have freelance writers writing them. Their contract can come up at any time. And if the general public or the editorial doesn't like what they have to say, they can wipe it away in no time. Literally at DC Comics from about the late 30s up until 2011, there was a strict continuity. Everything that the characters had done pretty much counted. I mean, there were reboots and, stuff like that to try and clean up what happened, what really counts. Even in 2011, literally all of it was wiped away just so they can try and get new people to come in and read that.
I would say that anime and manga has better character development than comic books because it has better longevity. The only thing that comic books get on the storytelling side of things that anime and manga doesn't is that they're constantly getting new writers too, so you constantly get more perspective. Whereas a story written for manga, you only get the perspective of that individual writer.
True, but also I'm gonna start taking sock side here because I mean, look at Spider-Man. I mean, back in like the 70s, 80s, whatever, dude was, growing up after being a perpetual teenager for the 60s. He's finally going to college. He's finally, he's getting with Mary Jane. The fuckers finally get married. After that, everyone's happy. Spider-Man finally hit a new step in his life. Granted, there's not as much progression from here on out. He got what he wanted. But then in the early 2000s, he makes a deal with the devil to wipe away that long-standing marriage that a ton of fans loved. And now we're back to good old Peter Parker's like down on his luck, doesn't have much money. He's still punching guys dressed like rhinos in the head. You know what I mean? Like, how are you gonna do all of this character development for these characters, have people get attached and love it, and, have it make sense for the character, and then go ahead and just wipe it away on a whim? That's something that you can, be for or against. But I think that in the mind of somebody who does read a manga, like if something happens, they find a more permanent fix for if they're gonna undo it. Spider-Man, I guess, could go and get remarried to Mary Jane or something. Like if somebody in a manga or whatever gets married and they want to undo it, there's a good chance that the broad's going to die or some shit. And then what are they going to do to bring her back? If it's a supernatural manga, where there's forces unseen and whatnot, or they have energy, maybe they can bring her back if they decide, oh shit, we fucked up. But otherwise, I mean, if it's more grounded in reality or something like that, that's just more character growth for the character that had to deal with it. Superheroes, nobody dies. Nobody stays dead, aside from Uncle Ben. Manga has more impact moments, I guess. Like,
to me, that says anime and manga focuses on the storytelling and comic books focus on the actual character themselves. For example, Berger and I collect comic books, so the first appearance of those characters constantly maintain and appreciate value.
True.
Makes sense.
Whereas with anime manga, you can go to Barnes and Nobles and you can pick up those like individual manga and kind of collect the series, which I'm sure you could sell for at the same price you bought it at, but they don't really appreciate the same way comic books do because it highlights the individual character versus the storytelling. I think comic books have a better collecting culture than anime does too.
I do agree. I don't think we have much of a collection culture or like a resale value type market. I think it's more open, if anything, just because they, I don't know if you guys are familiar with what Webtoon is, but Webtoon is for anybody that wants to really create their own manga series or animated series. Instead of actually drawing it out, it's all graphically illustrated on the computer, and then you just upload it, how you want to. That's where, these newer animes are emerging from, because Crunchyroll now has, if you guys don't know what Crunchyroll is, it's an anime streaming platform. But now that company has their own contract with Webtoon, where pretty much they'll select the Webtoons that gets the highest volume reading, like God of High School, like Tower of God. They just have a lot of these different things that are kind of cultivating, and these are like, they're not free, they're pretty much freelance, right? They do their own work. They pretty much, it's almost like an artist saying like, here's my mixtape, and they put it on DatPiff or SoundCloud. It's just kind of giving them that platform in order to see if other people like their music or not. And that's one thing I do like about the anime series, because it's more of an open market. I know you guys get freelance writers, but they don't have the creative control. They have to kind of follow that continuity that you bring up. Yeah, I think that was my point.
I could imagine just a bunch of like older, like senior, like Japanese dudes sitting in an office somewhere when the freelance writer drops their mixtape and they're like, damn, son, where'd you find this? We're going out for sake at the TGI Fridays after this. You know what I'm saying? But no, I agree with all your points, honestly. I don't even know where the hell I was going with this. I just want to make dumb jokes.
Here's my last point. Correct me if I'm wrong, Socrates, but I feel like that anime and manga kind of gets a little weird and perverted sometimes, where you don't really see that with comic books. And furthermore, you can usually like spot the difference between people that like comic books versus anime. However, I feel like both originally were kind of taboo to enjoy, but at some point in time, kind of cool to like.
You do know that like there's an entire category for just like pornography anime. right, and manga. It's called hentai. There's an entire, they have that. That's kind of deviant. I mean, I would say that's another thing I could say about manga, and I'm not too sure about comics, but there's different types of, there's not everything is just action and whooping ass. There's like drama. They have a range for a variety of different types of categories when you talk about anime and manga. So yeah, you have hentai, which is right over there, where it gets weird, and then, you have all the porn figures. It is kind of weird. Then you have drama. You have your action, which is my preferred, and I think is a lot of people's preferred, just because of historically Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, all your big hits are. That's why it's very widespread of what you can find when it comes to anime and manga. It's not going to be all action and adventure.
So what makes you prefer manga to comics?
Honestly, man, I think the character development was the biggest thing for me. Just to see somebody grow, you almost kind of get that attachment to them. You get to see dang, I remember when Naruto couldn't even, do a little Rasengan, or I remember when Gon didn't know what Nen was, things like that. And then you kind of grow to see him, and still obviously Gon is not going to be a good prime example because he's still a child, and we haven't seen him become a full grown man yet. But like Dragon Ball Z, you see him starting off at Dragon Ball with the little tail to now having, Ultra Instinct, and pretty much, that was another point I was going to bring up. Multiverses. I do like comics version of comics like Spider-Man. They have their own multiverse. You always see Carnage. You see these different types of Spider-Mans. I do like that. I think anime didn't really dabble into that until recently with Dragon Ball Super. Could be correct. I'll be incorrect, but majority of the manga and anime that I've watched don't really dabble in the multiverse. That was entertaining. I'll take that back. That was entertaining. The only other one that does that is Fate Stay Night. It's a different step. I didn't like that one though. It didn't really bring anybody's attention.
If you were to recommend one manga anime series to anybody who enjoys comics, what would it be and why?
Well, first I'd ask them, what do they like about their comics? Because we have to figure out, what's going to attract them. Because like I said, there's a broad range of what manga and anime can bring you to. I can give you something for drama. I can give you something for action. And it depends on what kind of action you want. Do you want gory action? Do you want satire action? Every author has their own spin to a story. So it really would just depend, what they like. I would always recommend Hunter x Hunter as I don't know where I want to start, because of the layers of the characters and the story itself it's amazing. It's almost compared to as almost a holy grail of anime. Yeah, outside of Dragon Ball Z, some people consider Naruto that, but to be honest with you, the story writing was very plain. It was, from my understanding, is for more of children and not to be as complex. So when I try to look at anime or manga, like I tell you, consider a piece of literature. Also.
Okay, and what are you actually watching or reading now? What's got your interest at the moment, at least?
So God of High School has had my interest for the longest. I've been reading it. It's still continuing. It's still ongoing, reading it on Webtoons. It's free for anybody that wants to watch it or read it on Webtoons. It's very good. They have the animated first season. But what I like about it is that it gets better as seasons go on. The fighting is amazing. First of all, the fighting scenes are amazing. That's the first thing that drew me in. And then those are one of the characters, like you said, he has the power, but he doesn't remember who he is. He doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't have much memory. He just knows that his grandpa taught him how to fight, and it's nothing about high school whatsoever. Let's start off there. And I don't want to really give away too much of the story because it gets kind of interesting, but like I said, you will see in those types of stories the references to Dragon Ball Z, the references to Hunter x Hunter within these mangas or animations. So it really just depends if you want to read the story, which that was one of the first mangas I've ever read, and I was surprised that I was that in tune with it. I was really liking it. And then sometimes, honestly, the manga can have a better fights than what you see on animation. To be fair, I'm not going to use this one, but I told Josie that the best fight from Hunter x Hunter has yet to be animated. You're talking about Hisoka and Crollo. That's the best fight. And from reading it in the manga, I would only hope they do it justice when they animate it. It just really depends on, what they want to see.
I think they both have interesting storytelling. And to conclude, to wrap it up here, I think this is something that everybody wants to debate or hear about. Superman versus Goku.
Superman versus Goku. How can we...
I would start by saying that if you were to face him off bat to bat, Superman would destroy Goku. Because we were talking about earlier that superhero comics, they maintain their powers, where animated series grow their powers over time.
Well, where are we
So
talking about? Are we talking
like
about
maybe when he's fighting Cell, I don't know. I think
making money fight? So
Superman would win.
we're not gonna pick him at Ultra Instinct when he's, he pretty much has the best of the best and he's beating people in other universes.
Yeah, when he's like way past Super Saiyan, then I'd have to give it to Goku.
That's what I'm saying. So it really depends on, and that's the thing about with character development. It's like, okay, where are you talking about? But you got to think about it. When we're talking about weaknesses, what weaknesses does Goku really have? He doesn't care about his kids. He's probably by far one of the worst fathers in anime, besides Gon's father. What weaknesses he has? Like, yeah, he has his loved ones, but the thing is, if we look at weaknesses, Superman has his. Superman has a one weakness that anybody can use to destroy him. A lady on the street can use to destroy him.
But Goku, I don't know what his problem is. He's always trying to prove himself or some shit. But he'll have these dudes on their last legs. He could finish them off. He's gonna save the day. What's he gonna do? He's gonna flick them a senzu bean. They're gonna be back up to full power, and then they're gonna go fight again. And it's like, you can't do that to Superman, bro.
But he wants to fight somebody at their full capacity because that's how he grows. That's the nature of a Saiyan. That's what makes some people. That's why some people hate Dragon Ball Z, because it's like, okay, well, how much fucking stronger can this man get? Like, after you've hit so many Super Saiyans, what the fuck else is he gonna do? Which is kind of interesting because, I mean, if you guys watch Dragon Ball Z, Goku and Vegeta have always had this rivalry, even though they're friends. After the first couple of the arc sagas, they're right now in the manga. Vegeta is the strongest Saiyan to ever exist at the moment, which is a totally new approach or sight of the actual Dragon Ball if you ever watch it. Because 9 times out of 10, Goku is always the strongest one. It really depends. If you're talking about Superman versus Goku, depends when are we talking about Goku, and then on top of that, like what weaknesses does Goku have? Goku really just always wants to get stronger. That's all he cares about. He doesn't care about anybody else. He just wants to get himself to get stronger. He just wants to train.
Aside from kryptonite, though, let's say there is no kryptonite. It's just feats versus body on body, just dudes wrestling.
He wouldn't want to fight with kryptonite. Knowing Goku, he probably wouldn't.
No, he probably wouldn't. He ain't gonna want to go up against that big corn-fed country boy trying to wrestle him, dude. He's gonna grab him. He's gonna zap his ass. He's gonna get him, dude.
But I mean, he can use powers, or is it just fighting?
Either way, dude. I wouldn't want to take a punch from Superman. Punching him's like punching steel.
But this is another thing. So, and this is once again asking about when are we getting to, because Ultra Instinct, I don't know if you guys know what that is, but pretty much it's new version of Super Saiyan, or like a new level of power up that nobody knows. Nobody really know the full grasp of it completely. But it's pretty much where you've mastered your instinct to any point. Nobody can touch you. Literally, not. And this is where it gets OD. Like, that's another thing about character development. So, what point do you make it that your character is no longer overpowered or OP? So that's the biggest thing. So that's where Dragon Ball Z has kind of gotten to, where like, okay, all your characters are OP, nobody can kill them. But that's why they switched to the multiverse finally. They started dabbling in other universes and finding other strong people from other universes to fight, things of that nature. But I mean, to your point, it'll be an interesting match to watch. It's just very hard to say like how it will go, and then you have to pick what Goku are you talking about.
Good point. Is that like blue hair Goku for us?
No. That's Super Saiyan God. That's not blue hair Goku. That's a different Goku.
Okay.
Goku I'm talking about, he has like a almost like the aura is almost like a purplish. It's not really spiky. It's just the aura that flows over him. It's very calm and soothing.
Okay.
And all he has to do is sit there and he'll just whip your ass. You won't touch him.
So is that the most OP Goku that is available?
Unfortunately.
Okay. So if that's the best Goku, then I raise you All-Star Superman or Superman 1 million, who's like, dude can live in the sun. He accomplished every feat needed, and he was pretty much at the height of his powers. Like, this is unstoppable Superman.
How many planets has Superman destroyed?
He could destroy all of them if he really chose to. Dude's nuts. He can move planets. Like, if he were to just, I don't know how it works, but he could fly to, like, the side of a planet, and he could probably push it out of orbit. Dude's juiced up. If you put him anywhere probably in space where he's even closer to a red sun, that's the thing too. I mean, he doesn't really get tired either, and he can take a punch. He can take the tanks. He's just as fast as pretty much the Flash, who I would argue could probably be close to Goku. I mean, I know that he can pretty much teleport, but I just feel like Superman's built for it. That's what I'm just going to say.
And then, like I said, there's different universes. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Like I said, like, you also have to think about it. There's like such thing as evil Goku, because when you're dabbling into multi-universes, there's such thing as evil Goku, who was out destroying planets.
I think that's a pretty good conclusion to the Goku versus Superman fight. I really enjoyed having you on, Socrates. You've been our best guest, first guest, only guest. Next week, I don't know that we have anything decided that we want to read. What do you want to read, Brigger?
Dude, it'll just be a surprise. We'll let them know.
I'm dead.
For the first time ever, it's going to be a surprise. We always kind of give you some kind of cliffhanger at the end of these episodes, but we don't know what we're going to read yet, so we'll let you guys know as soon as we know.
Good thing to do is check us out on Instagram and Twitter at CBJPod. You'll probably see some hints posted there if you want to find out early.
Thank you, Socrates, for joining our podcast. I don't know if you want to shout out any of your handles.
Montero95 on Instagram. Something simple. But I appreciate you guys having me on here, man. I like this. It was a good little debate, and I'm pretty sure we'll debate more when we get to work.
Absolutely. I'll catch you at our 9 to 5.
And yeah, definitely, man. All righty.
All right. This concludes episode 12 of CBJ. For any listeners, have a good night.